Welcome to working with InDesign and in the creation of layouts for a double page spread, a DPS. This is just a quick sample using mock body text, and I just wanted to show you how this can be put together. In this example, it's got some text on a path and it's got a text around it, or sorry, a text wrap around it. So it's also got with the mock body text, this has been formatted into a particular style, and it's been formatted with leading as well, so just to give it a bit more space, and obviously all the images in here. So what I want to do is just show you how this is set up and how you can put it together. I've got two files. In fact, I'm going to start off with the first one, which is just the InDesign file. I think I've got this down here, and here's the first design file. So the second one, which has got the text wrap on it, just a little bit more finesse and also pasting into shapes, and also just a more simple one. However, there is text wrapping around here, which is actually dividing and pushing the text away. Now, right at the end here, this is just highlighted, you see that this text does not have any hidden text. You have to be really careful about that. When you're just doing mock text, just to get a rough idea of how the layout looks, it's maybe not so important. Sometimes you do get a word count you have to work to, so you can really work to, with that word count, what the text is going to look like, what size and how many words there are, so you can get really quite an accurate look to the finish, even though the type is not in at that stage. Of course, what is in is that, because it's to do with images of steps, just from sample imagery here, just utilizing for this example, with steps it's quite nice to get some vernacular relating to not only the visual style but also the legibility or the reading style of it, in terms of making that communication better. So an art director's role, for example, is they quite often come up with headlines, even if the writer might be still doing the text for this. But at least you can see how it's coming together, and there's a sort of story relating to the subheads and the headline about what's happening here. Okay, so without further ado, let's just get in there and build this. Now, most magazines, if I just go File, New here, and go to Document, most magazines are not A4, if working in more of a European or English style format. They're actually more like about 26 centimeters high. But just for the purpose of this, we're just going to go through and create an A4. So I don't want a page size of A3, I just want to go to a page size of A4. So of course you can go and create any custom size. And what I'm also working with is, for my sizing, is millimeters. So I've got millimeters here, but at any stage I might be able to just go from here to the preferences. Oh, it's grayed out at the moment. I'll just show you that in just a minute as I set this up, just to show you how things change. But if I'm setting this up, you can change this to any measurement format you want, and you do that from the preferences just up here in units and increments. So what I'm going to do is just first set this up and just show you. I do want down here to work out my bleeds, and I've also got this thing called bleeds and slug. So what I'm doing is I want to, with this new file, I want to give it just 3 millimeters, not centimeters. So in this case I'm going to go 0.3, and I'll just click here. So I'm getting a bleed. This is where you also set your slug up. Now this has got a bleed on it, this example before, and the images always go over the edge, because you have your trim mark, you have your type area, sometimes called image area, just in here, and then you have the bleed area where this is going to be cut off. But if you take your images right to the edge, quite often the guillotine, especially inner pages of a magazine, will leave this horrible little white line, and it's the last thing you want, so you always use bleed. Most magazines use about 3 millimeters. Okay, so you see I put 0.3 in here and it's registering it as millimeters. So the other thing that you might want is setting up your margins and columns. I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to do it when I put the magazine together. So I'm A4 and hold it. I want a double page spread. So how do you do that? Well, you need to click facing pages. We've also got the intent, which is going to be print. This is a magazine. Obviously this program works lovely with web and mobile devices as well, but not covered in this tutorial. So I'm going to start off with 2 pages. Now the problem is if you do 2 pages, in fact I'm just going to demonstrate this to show you, because we can always come back to this, and start page 1 is you're going to get something like this. Facing pages, let's see what we get. That's not a facing page. You see it's gone down here, and we can go onto our pages here and it shows you that it's off skew here. We don't want that. This is a normal way of working because you have your cover and you go all the way through to the back page of the cover, and that's the last page, but then you have your inner pages starting always on the even page would be 2, 3, and 2, 3 would be together. So we'd have to essentially do 3 pages, but no, we don't have to do that. If I just come back here, but just before I do that, I just want to show you, as I mentioned before, preferences, units and measurements. This is where you can change to whatever you want, and I had vertical centimeters. Actually, I want them both millimeters, but you can have pickers, inches, whatever you want. So I'm just going millimeters, so I've got them both the same. So I don't get things like my bleed being slightly different. I just want them all to stay in millimeters for the way I'm working, and just go OK, and that should solve the problem. At any stage, you can also come back here and go back to your document setup, and I'm just going to change this to start page being 2. So it'll be, remember, even pages on the left, so it'll be starting page 2 and 3. We don't need page numbers for this double page spread, and this is looking good, but I'm not going to, and nor do I have access now to get my columns like I did initially. But we didn't want that anyway, we want to do that manually. I'll just go OK, and here we are, we've got our 2 pages together. So now we want to just form out a layout, just to put things quickly together. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go to my layout. So if I come down on the layout, now what you see is I've got my pages still open up here. And if I come down on the layout here, and I don't want to go alternate layout, that's for doing when you're working with varied formats, particularly for DPS, digital publishing, or varied sizes, and this is not covered in this tutorial, but you can use that as well. But what we want is just good old margins and columns. Now this is where I can set things up, and both of these pages are highlighted. I could do this in the master page as well, and then everything would be great if you're doing multiple pages, but seeing we're only doing just 2 pages here, I'm just going to do it on my pages on the actual document itself. This is where I could set up my number of columns. Just make sure you got your preview on, and you see that starts to do both at the same time. Okay, and whatever I set up in here and I change things, that'll be done. But now I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go cancel, because I want you to come up here and click in this grey area here, and it's deselected that page. Just click on the left hand side. We're going to do a slightly different version. So if it's just highlighted on one page, and you can do this with either page if you're doing in the master as well, you could just come up here and just click on one page like so, and double click on the master to access it, but we're going to do it down here, left page, come back under your layout, basically only margins and columns, and this is where I just want to do 2 columns and sets just happening on that page. Not too happy with the actual margins here, or gutters, so this is where you can actually increase it up a little bit. See how the gutter's increasing. I'm going to go all the way to 10 there. Also want to bring in my tops and bottoms with the margins as well, so I can have them all the same or link them separately. So I can turn that off. So it's broken the link, and I'm just going to play around with just bringing that one down to about 18. I think go to 20, and the bottom one I'm going to leave like so, but I'm going to bring in my inside. See how it's happening in the inside there to say 15, and I think I'll do the outside to 15 as well. Okay, so you've got a lot of control how you change that. And I'm just going to go OK. So 15, 15, or the bottom, I think I'll make sure I bring that up to OK, 15. And I'll go OK. So now, of course, I click back on this one, and I can come back into my layout, or in terms of margins and columns. And for a start, I'm going to go to 3 on this one, and I just want to bring the top, seeing it's still broken there, down till I get to 20, and then just 15 for the other 2. You can just type it in. I'm just clicking the arrows, but whatever is the easiest for you, and then just go OK. Now I'm just going to, of course, save that, so make sure you save regularly, and I'm going to call it just new DPS, because it's DPS for double page spread, and I'll just save that there. Of course, I'm in Creative Cloud 2017 for this example. And what I want to do is now I'm going to bring in my images. Now, just so it's not one long video, I'm just going to stop there. So this is video 1, and video 2 and 3 will follow with how we put this together. Okay, so stay tuned for video number 2.